If you clicked on this video, you're most likely a gamer just like myself. You've probably played games since you were a kid and have many years of experience under your belt. Once you start a game, you generally know where to go, what the objectives are, and what you're supposed to do. A lot of this is because we have been conditioned to understand the core concept of video games, no matter what style or genre it is. But for someone newer with little to no experience, this isn't the case at all. If you've ever tried to introduce video games to someone that's never played them before, you will likely notice that they struggle with the most basic concepts that we never really think twice about. Take this clip for example. If you were thrown into this game right now, you would probably try to start running by either holding down B or pressing in the left thumbstick when using some type of controller. Or this clip for example. You probably have the urge to rotate the camera angle so you can actually see where you're going. Well, beginners do not know how to do this, and often assume that this is just how games are made to be played. They never really think that pressing a button can make them faster, and they won't think that a simple control stick or mouse can help them look around. They have no reason to think these things. Much like learning another language, they will only know what they are told. This is why we are going to be discussing why learning how to game is just like learning another language. When learning another language, let's say French to make some easier references later on, you often start with very basic things. You learn to count to 10, how to say hello, and maybe introduce yourself. This is just like going through tutorials in games. They may teach you how to sprint, look around, and perform some basic actions to allow you to progress through the first bit of the game. However, even though you can count to 10 and introduce yourself, you don't really know how to do anything else. You can't converse with anyone, you won't be able to understand anyone, all you have is a starting point that you can try to expand on.
What's your name?
Me.
Yes, you!
I am me.
He's me, and I'm you.
For the more curious people, they will try to learn as much as possible before going into the more advanced things, and others will try to get by on the basics and hope for the best. These two types of people have vastly different experiences in their gaming adventures, but that's perfectly fine because gaming is meant to be played however is enjoyable for you. Average and experienced gamers, on the other hand, still go through learning curves even though the learning gap is much smaller. Other games that don't have tutorials and throw you right into the gameplay are like a person that speaks Canadian French and is trying to learn France French. The language is technically the same and you can probably understand a lot of what is being said, but not everything is that clear and there's still more to learn. There's different slang and structure that can throw these people off, but they can still very easily understand everything.
They know all the slang terms. They have a list.
Even snowboarding?
Even disco dust.
These average and experienced gamers know the general controls across most games, but there are still games that use unconventional methods for the controls, such as using a controller bumper to melee instead of clicking in the right thumbstick, for example. These people don't really need to learn much, and once they understand the differences, the rest of the way is generally pretty easy. We're not really focused on experienced gamers here though, and we're going to move back to the inexperienced people learning the language of gaming, but that's just another example of how learning to game is just like learning a new language that I wanted to point out. No matter what console's controller you're talking about, nothing is familiar about holding a controller to a new gamer. The closest thing that they may have experience holding that is comparable to this may be like a TV remote, and I would argue that is not similar in the slightest. With no experience holding a game controller and all the buttons being foreign to you, you would have no reason to press any of these buttons unless told otherwise, or out of curiosity. This is why tutorials are very important to new gamers in order to keep them interested in their games. It is either this, or they need an experienced gamer by their side telling them what to do every step of the way. Learning the controller itself is learning to count to 10, and understanding how to use all the buttons together is like learning how to form sentences, and eventually be able to have a conversation in the new language, which is the ultimate end goal. This takes a while though, so it's easy to see why new gamers like games like Mario Kart so much, because it is about as simple as it gets while also being really fun for everyone. Starting simple and moving on to more complex games is the best path to take in my opinion, much like learning any language, but sometimes these games don't interest people and they want to play more complex games that look more fun to them. This is more like not knowing French and being placed in the middle of France, trying to find your way around with little to no help. Sure, it is possible, but you'll have a much harder time than if you took some time to learn the language a bit before visiting the country. Of course, if these people have someone next to them to teach them everything, it's more like having a tour guide with you. They can figure out information and converse with others way more effectively to make more progress, but you will still not be able to do much by yourself. Utilizing a keyboard and mouse, on the other hand, is a little different. Most people have experience using these either through work, school, or general use at home. This may make things easier for new gamers, as they are more used to the functions and capabilities of their controller. They have their foundation in the new language, however they still do not have the experience of playing games. Suddenly the letters on the keyboard have a different use, and they have to figure out what those are. This is similar to when somebody knows French and is trying to learn Spanish.
Spanish?
The languages are still pretty similar, but they're different enough that you still need to learn a lot to be able to converse and understand with one another. It is most likely easier to learn by knowing the previous language due to its similarities. The mouse is a bit of a wild card on the other hand, and some new gamers might not even know to use it initially. I mean, why would they even assume that when there are so many more keys in front of them than there are buttons on a controller? Like I said, they are very familiar with everything, but they still need to learn how to use everything at their disposal properly. But the way we use inputs for games is not all that learning is limited to. As an average to experienced gamer, you can identify objectives, heads-up displays, and location pointers very easily. But if you've ever tried to teach a new gamer how to play, you will most likely see that they don't understand to look for these things and will not notice them. This is like teaching them proper sentence structure. Once they have the controller down, they need to understand how to progress through a game, and if you aren't used to typical level progression, you won't know what to look for. There could be a lot going on the screen, and it could be a bit overwhelming, making it very hard to see things that they should be picking up on. This is especially accurate if they're looking down at the controller all the time to see which buttons are which. All of this just comes with the difficulty of learning a new language. The more you practice, the better you get at it. You cannot expect someone to just start learning a new language because you handed them a dictionary. Now, as an experienced gamer, I do believe that learning the gaming language is a lot easier than learning a new spoken language. Obviously, I'm going to say that being experienced and all, but hear me out. Video games carry a visual aspect that you don't really get with spoken languages. Everything that you press on a controller almost always has a subsequent action that happens on screen that you can visualize. There is also some logical sense behind controllers, like using the analog stick to move around, for example. Learning and using a new spoken language, you don't really have the trial and error method at your disposal. At least, not until you've learned enough of the language that you can start struggling through conversations with someone. On the other side of the coin, however, there are many different games that have many different controls between them, which I could see giving someone a harder time across the board. In learning a new language, nothing will change the way you say a sentence, except for some slang that inevitably gets invented by some high school students every now and then. But for the most part, everything stays the same. Odds are that new gamers will try to get comfortable with one game and play over and over until they're good at it, which I believe makes other games easier to understand. This is generally how I started gaming, where I loved playing Super Smash Bros. On the Nintendo 64 non-stop until my friends introduced me to their favorite games. I believe it's just the right way to learn for new gamers, like I've said previously in this video already. But anyways, those are the reasons why I believe that learning to game is just like learning a new language. Let me know what you think about this, and if there are any more points that you have to expand on this topic down in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.